Many people are waiting for something in their life to change, to take away the lack or the separation of not having the life that they want. You work hard and you start accumulating abundance or wealth, and you start thinking, okay, I want the boat. When you get the boat, the experience produces an emotion that takes away the lack of not having it. But if you're creating reality and it's not working, then many people will spend their entire life living in lack.
Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Best-selling author.
His expertise is the intersection of the fields of neuroscience, epigenetics, and quantum physics.
Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Nothing changes in our life until we change. If you want to become abundant, study abundant people. What are the qualities and characteristics that you would have to embody to become that abundant person? And get busy doing that. You got to be really badass good at something. You got to know your message. You got to know what you're doing. And then the criticism becomes actually an exchange of information. I think we're living in a crazy time where it's very easy to take shots at people. But I think if you're really an expert on what you do, it's hard to take you down.
Yeah. You think we need to forgive in order to heal then?
Yes, I do. And forgiveness is taking your attention off that person or problem. The only way you do that is overcome the emotion. We have people that have to lower the volume of that emotion and keep taking their attention off that problem. The body is an unbridled horse. Sooner or later, the body is going to acquiesce. When it does, there's a liberation of energy. The heart opens up and the person feels completely different.
Is there something you think cannot be manifested?
Well, I mean, I'm
excited that you're back on, and I want to dive into the first question because I think a lot of people are feeling stuck in their lives. They're feeling stuck in different areas of their lives. So what do you think is the biggest thing, first off, that is blocking people from experiencing healing in their life to create more peace?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, you have to do the work. You have to light a match in a dark place. If 95% of who we are by the time we're in the middle of our life are a set of hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions, automatic habits and unconscious behaviors, and immediate emotional responses, 95% is programmed into our biology. It's not enough to think positively, because you can think positively with the 5% of your conscious mind, but we're programmed subconsciously to feel negative, right? So mind and body are in opposition. And so the work is, if your personality creates your personal reality, and then your personality is made of how you think, how you act, and how you feel, then the first step to change, to truly change, is kind of uncluttering ourselves from those programs. And we've discovered, based on our research, is the best way to do that is to become conscious of those unconscious thoughts. So conscious of those unconscious thoughts that we don't go unconscious to them in our waking day. I can't, it's too hard, I'll never make it, I'm a failure, it's someone else's fault. And then, a habit is when you've done something so many times that the body now knows how to do it better than the conscious mind. The body's programmed to basically behave as if it's in the past, right? So think about any habit that you've ever broken. The first thing that happens is you feel uncomfortable. The body's craving, it's familiar, known patterns. And so you have to become conscious, and then many times when we're breaking a habit, you forget and you go unconscious. Mm-hmm. So the fundamental question is, how many times do you have to forget until you stop forgetting and start remembering?
How many times is that?
I don't know. It just depends on the person. Right. That's the moment of change. And then emotions, of course, are chemical residue. They're records from the past. And the stronger the emotions we feel from some past event, the more we pay attention to it. And the arousal from some stressful event causes the brain to freeze a frame and take a snapshot. And that's a long-term memory, right? So when the person thinks about the event, they're producing the same chemistry in their brain and body as if the event was occurring. And it just takes a thought and a feeling, an image and an emotion, a stimulus and response, and you can condition your body to subconsciously become the mind of that emotion. Now the body's literally in the past. So it takes an enormous amount of energy, an enormous amount of awareness to catch yourself from going unconscious. And the only way you become conscious, the only way you get good at changing your conscience or your consciousness is to catch yourself going unconscious. And sooner or later, if you get really good at it, you begin to disentangle from the program and you begin to objectify your subjective self. And there's dissonance that goes on in the brain and body that's very uncomfortable. It seems really hard. It seems like we can't see there's an end. There's circuitry that's no longer firing and wiring. There's no longer the same chemicals that are produced. You're no longer signaling the same genes or the same hormones. The body's in flux, it's in dissonance, it's out of order. And most people return back to the familiar, right? And they say, oh, this feels right to me. Well, that feels familiar, right? So if a person is stuck in their life, the first step to change is examining your thoughts, paying attention to how you speak and how you act, and look at these emotions that keep you connected to the past and finally decide, does this emotion belong in my future? And I think many people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. We literally have to become someone else, and it's fundamental. We already know this. And so many people don't want to go through the work of taking a look at themselves because it's tedious. It's easier to turn on the television or scroll through your social media or make a phone call or get distracted, right? But we discovered that in our 7-day, week-long retreats, if you give people something to do, if they understand the philosophy, the theory, they understand the knowledge base of what they're doing, and you give them something to do, and so they can begin to change, right around the second day, people start, breaking through. They start seeing a different landscape. They're no longer tormenting their body with the same thoughts that produce the same emotions. They're no longer complaining and blaming and making excuses. And they're thinking differently because they're challenged to learn a lot of information. They're challenged to learn information and knowledge, and that causes people to think differently. And then if you start to think differently because you learn new information, you begin to make different choices. And if you make different choices, you can begin to do different things and behave in different ways, and you can create new experiences, and you can feel new emotions. And that's exactly what we discovered that changes a person's biology. The second point from that question is many people are waiting for something out there in their life to change, to take away the lack or the separation of not having the life that they want. I mean, think about it. Our senses plug us into three-dimensional reality, and the way that we create is we create based on lack. You see the sports car, you see the wardrobe, you see the scarf, you see the boat, whatever it is that a person wants. The lack of not having that particular thing causes the brain to naturally dream about having it. The challenge is that the only way for most people to get that dream to actually become actualized in three-dimensional reality, you got to do something. You got to do something because there's the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of having it is called time. And time is separation, right? So we've been hypnotized and conditioned to believe that when the experience happens in our life, well, think about it. You work hard, you save money, you make sacrifices, you put in your extra time, you work and you start accumulating success or abundance or wealth, and you start thinking, okay, I want the boat, right? And then you spend a year saving up all your money, you get the boat. When you get the boat, the experience produces an emotion that takes away the lack of not having it. But if you're creating reality and it's not working, then many people will spend their entire life living in lack or separation, and we cannot attract anything in our life that we feel separate from. It's impossible.
So say it one more time. We cannot attract anything we want in our lives that we feel separate from.
Exactly.
What if we do attract something from lack? When we have it, how will it make us feel?
Well, if you work hard and you put in your time, and matter to matter, you're getting your behaviors to match your intentions and your actions equal to your thoughts. You're getting your mind and body working together. You're going to run into your goal. You're going to run into your experience. The experience of your abundance, your experience of your thing that you want, takes away the lack of not having it, right? But some people are creating, but they're spending their whole life in lack, waiting for their world to change to feel abundant, right? And we discovered that that's kind of the opposite of the way people actually get what they want. When they start holding a very clear vision of their future, and we call that intention, and you need a coherent brain to do that, and we work diligently to get people's brains tuned up to order. The more coherent the brain, the more high functioning it is, the greater the signal. And it turns out that you have to feel the emotion of the future before it happens, because the emotion is the energy that's going to drive your body to that end and to have the experience. And at the same time, if you're truly practicing feeling the emotion of your future, you won't be in lack. In fact, you'll feel, if you feel like your future has already happened, you'll never look for it. You only look for it when you feel separate from it. So it's kind of an analogy of, like, cause and effect, waiting for your healing to feel gratitude, waiting for your abundance to feel worthy or successful, waiting for your relationship to feel love, the old model of reality of cause and effect. The new model of reality is causing an effect.
Causing an effect.
Yeah, the moment you feel gratitude, your healing begins.
Wow.
The moment you're empowered and you're worthy, you're stepping or generating abundance, you're stepping towards your success. Now, the moment you're in love with yourself and in love with life and you see beauty in all things, it's natural that you'll attract an equal. So that's causing an effect, right? And so all you need is a clear intention and an elevated emotion. Mm-hmm. And when you combine that clear intention and elevated emotion, just like when a person is remembering the past and feeling the emotion, if you start holding the intention and you feel the emotion, the stronger the emotion you feel, the more you remember the vision, and you can begin to remember your future. Why is that important? Because biologically, if you do it well, your brain will look like it's already happened. And if you do it really well, genetically, your body will begin to change to look like it's already happened. In other words, our data shows that in 7 days at a week-long event, when people really get in the creative process, they upregulate thousands of genes and metabolites to suggest that they're living in a whole new life, a whole new environment. The body's so objective. It doesn't know the difference between a real-life experience that creates the emotion and the emotion that we can create by thought alone. To the body, it's exactly the same. So the body begins to believe it's living in that future. And of course, there's the thought and the feeling. There's the image and the emotion. There's the stimulus and response. We can condition the body emotionally to begin to believe it's living in the future. And if the environment signals the gene, and it does, the end product of an experience in the environment is emotion, you could actually regulate genes, upregulate genes ahead of the environment. That's exactly what we discovered. And people's bodies and brains change enough that it looks like the event has already happened. Now, this is where the fun part starts. Because if there's physical evidence in your brain and body that it has already happened, time to relax. This is when the synchronicities, this is when the opportunities, this is when the coincidences, all of a sudden you no longer have to go anywhere and do anything to get it. Somehow there's an attraction, they're coming to you. They're coming to you without having to do anything. And so it's just a reframing of our understanding of how to create. You can get really good at creating a lot of things matter to matter. You can, study. You can learn from your mistakes. You can, get consulting. You can do all these things, and you can get really good at doing it. But there's another way. There is another way. And so to answer the question about being stuck, many people are living their whole entire life, not consciously. They're just subconsciously waiting for their wealth to happen so they could feel abundant, waiting for their new relationship to feel love, that old model of reality.
And what I'm hearing you say is that your personality creates your personal reality. And your personality is based on how we think, act, and feel. And so if we're living in a personality state currently that is creating the results of feeling separate or lacked from abundance, a better relationship, more money, better health, then we must learn to shift the personality to create a new reality for ourselves.
It's exactly the truth. In other words, in order for you to create a new personal reality, you have to change your personality. In other words, nothing changes in our life until we change. Now, look, it's really simple. Just just make it really simple. Let's just say somebody wants to have a goal to make a certain amount of money.
Yes.
Or they want to get in shape, right? And here's the personality who's on the couch, who's, eating
Eating the
Fritos,
chips.
yeah, and drinking a beer, Twinkies, laying around, not motivated at all. And the person wants to get healthy, or the person wants to become abundant. There's got to be a lot of things that have to change in order for you to be the personality of abundance, because it isn't abundance, it's who you become. It's who you become in the process.
It's almost like this person is out of alignment from the goal, the vision, the dream that they want to have. They have to be in more alignment of the person that can create that and harmonize with it, is what I'm hearing you say.
And it's let's demystify it. If you want to become abundant, study abundant people. Get as much knowledge and resources, enough connections in your brain, so you have a storehouse of information for you can dream what it is to be abundant. Because if you study abundant people, they made a lot of mistakes. People betrayed them. People got stole from them. They lost everything. They had a journey, and the difference is they just went one more time. They just didn't see failure. They just kept going. So, what are the qualities and characteristics that you would have to embody to become that abundant person? And get busy doing that. Get busy doing that in terms of change, and use it as an experiment. Like, if I change, will my life change, right? If I give up lack, if I give up fear, yeah, it sounds easy theoretically. You're going to have to put your time in. You're going to have to work inwardly. You're going to have to do some surveillance on your own thoughts and how you act and how you feel. And you got to get really good. So good at doing it with your eyes closed, you got to do it with your eyes open. It means you can't default in your life, right?
Yeah, when life happens and there's distractions and people in your face and people cutting you off
One
in the
emotional
street.
response, and you seamlessly return back to the old
it's the
personality.
worst.
It's the worst. But that's why we have another day.
Yes.
It's a new day. Like, okay, how did I do in one day, one lifetime? Like, how did I do? I sucked. Okay, God's not up there with a laptop keeping track. You got another shot at it the next day. So can you learn from the last day and say, when did I fall from grace? Oh, I reacted to that person or circumstance with the same emotion. That emotion caused me to behave as if I was in my past and believe in my past. And that's when you no longer see the future, because the emotion that you're feeling is keeping you connected to the past. You only believe in your future when you feel the emotion of your future. So enthusiasm and theos, filled with God, inspiration, inspire the movement of energy, right? The energy that it takes, the looking forward to, the optimism, that is what drives us to our dreams. And you just got to be able to sustain that state of being independent of anyone or anything in your life. And if you can, get ready, because that's when your life changes. You're literally thinking differently, you're acting differently, and you're feeling differently. That's a new personality, and that means a new personal reality. That's the experiment.
Yeah.
It's the experiment to try it out. So it's just uncovering that 95%. You can say, I'm healthy, I'm wealthy with the 5% of your conscious mind. And your body's saying, no, you're not, dude. You're miserable. You're unhappy. You're suffering. The thought never makes it past the brainstem to the body. Get the body in the right emotional state. And then we can only accept, believe, and surrender to the thoughts that are equal to the emotional state of the body.
I'm curious about, you've shared so much wisdom at your week-long retreats, the interviews we've done, many interviews you've done online. I'm curious personally, is there something in the last decade where you shifted your personality so much that everything started to accelerate upward for you with your health, your business, your relationships? Was there something that you changed personally, Dr. Joe, that you created a new personal reality, even though you'd been studying this for a long time, but you somehow reflected on what you were doing, whether something was working or not, that you shifted and boom, it unlocked something new for you?
Well, of course. I mean, what I do takes an enormous amount of sacrifice. I'm on the road over 7 months out of the year. We're running week-long events just about once a month. We're doing advanced follow-ups, and we have research, and we have nonprofits, and we have Navy SEALs and special ops and indigenous tribes. We're really excited about making cultural change. I think one of the key moments for me, Lewis, was when I was writing my last book, when you write a book, this, if you're writing a scientific book, you're always thinking about the one person that's going to that judge you or to take a shot at you. And I just remember thinking when I wrote the book, and then I was thinking about writing the forward, and I was like, my God, I really don't care what people think anymore. Like the reason I can say that is because I know with certainty that I'm contributing to people's lives. I know that. I've seen the stage testimonials that are unbelievable. I've seen the data in science, the scientific discoveries that we're making, what we're publishing. I mean, we are greater than we think. And I know that because the data is greater than we think. And we're studying people. We're studying our community. We're not studying Buddhist monks or we're not studying nuns with 40 years of devotion, we're in a monastery. We're studying human beings just like you and me. And so when I realized, my God, like, I really don't care what people think because I know on a deep level that I'm making a difference in people's lives. And when the science started coming out, I was just like, oh my God, this is no longer pseudoscience. We have the largest database in the world on meditation. We have so much information. We measure everything, brains, EEGs, fMRIs, we measure heart, coherence, we measure HRV, we measure blood, we measure urine, we measure tears, we measure microbiome, we measure saliva, we measure breath, we measure breast milk. Anything you can imagine, we measure. We measure the energy of the room. And we have never been disappointed with the outcomes. It's always greater than we think. So when I kind of thought about it, and I thought, well, I really don't care anymore. I know that I'm making a difference. Those people are probably not going to like me anyway, so let them judge me, right? But I know that if this resonates with people, to give them a formula for change and understand that when I change, my life changes. And I've interviewed enough people that have had remarkable remissions from all kinds of chronic health conditions that have blown my mind. And they were not doing their meditations to heal. They were doing their meditations to change. And they understood that when I change, I heal. When I open my heart, my body's so objective, it doesn't know the difference between a real life experience that's creating this love and the love that I'm creating on my own. My body's believing it's living in a nurturing environment. Okay, if I have the intention, when I feel this emotion to signal genes, our data shows 100% of the people, 100% of the people that were in that state were able to literally, by intention, upregulate genes. So I have a lot of hope in human potential. And a turning point for me was when I realized that on some level, I really don't care. I'm interested in the people that are open and really want to experiment, because I think this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. It's a time in history to know how.
I'm so glad you shared that, because you've been in this work for a long time. You've been working, in the medical space and the science space and the meditation space and the spirituality space. You've been blending these worlds for decades now. But a lot of people, I guess, getting started in their career or earlier in their career, it's hard for them to not care about the critics or what people think. What advice would you give to someone in their 20s who struggles with criticism or struggles with what people putting something out there they really care about and getting judged for that? How would you coach them up on that?
I think one of the key things is to never take criticism personally. Sometimes feedback that you get that's critical is good for you, because you know this. You take a look at yourself on camera, and you're like, oh, I'm going to cinch that in a little bit. Criticism causes us to become self-aware, right? It gets abusive when you attack the character of the person, and you should never take that personally. Like people, I don't care. Like I really don't know what people say. I really don't care. The other thing is you got to be really badass good at something. You can't be mediocre. You got to put your time in again. You got to be an expert. You got to know your message. You got to know what you're doing. You got to know that you know. Like you got to be at that level of expertise. You got to be that competent that you're immersed in whatever field that you're in and you're current with it all. Then the criticism becomes actually an exchange of information, and you can disagree and have a great conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that when you assault somebody's character, it's a distraction, right? So I would never take it personally at this point. I really don't care, especially if you're mission driven and you got a vision and that's where you're going. Use the criticism as a healthy way to check in and say, is that true for me?
Yeah.
Okay, he's got a point or she's got a point. Okay, I get that. I'm gonna change this, but this part I know to be true, and I do that all the time. Like people say, oh, you should do this. I'm like, no. I know where we're going. Like I have to make those decisions. So I think it's healthy. I think we're living in a little bit of a crazy time where it's very easy to take shots at people. But I think if you're really an expert on what you do, it's hard to take you down.
Yeah. We mentioned about, people trying to attract more money or a healthy relationship. And it seems like a lot of people are struggling in love and relationships, bouncing around from relationship to relationship, or just heartbroken when it doesn't work out. Do you feel like you have to be fully healed in order to receive love in a new relationship? Or if you're brokenhearted and broken, you can still receive love?
I think love heals in a lot of ways, but it's got to be really unconditional love. It really has to be love that that transcends conditions. I love you because, but it's just kind of a state. So practicing feeling love is one of the things that we work on as a community. Feeling frustration, feeling impatience, feeling resentment, it really changes the way the heart functions.
When you're living in that state, I'm frustrated, I'm impatient,
when I'm resentful, and I'm judgmental.
What happens to the brain and heart when you're living in those lower energetic states?
Yeah, so for sure, when you're living by those emotions, the heart basically is starting to become aroused. It's getting a rush of chemistry. But you're not running, you're not fighting, and you're not hiding, but it's pumping. So it's pumping against a closed system, and it causes the heart to kind of get strained and beat out of order. When the heart is incoherent like that, the waves that are created that are incoherent cancel each other out. The energy of the heart goes down, and you trust less, you're less inspired, you're less affectionate, you're less kind, you're less caring, because the heart has a different consciousness, right? So, and then the other hormonal centers of the body. So when we do our work, we start many of the meditations with opening our hearts, because the heart is the creative center. And when energy makes it to the heart, we've seen this over and over again. Once there's enough energy in the heart, we've seen it you put your attention on it and you start to relax into it. There's a very low frequency that builds up in the heart. That's the energy that the heart uses to beat. So you're giving it life. And we know that that if you can get really good at that. If you slow your breathing down, you slow your brain waves down, and you get out of survival, and you start to see in more pictures and images, you're kind of in a relaxed state. But when you're starting to relax into the heart, we've measured this enough times. It does two things. It sends a wave of energy, like grabbing a big sheet and going like this. It just sends a wave of energy to the brain. And it tells the brain to get creative, dream. The heart is telling you, fall in love with your future. Pick a new possibility that you would love to experience. And the brain goes into that super creative state. So the forebrain is the creative center. The heart is the creative center. It's the union of opposites, of polarity, of dualities, where wholeness begins. So the heart informs the brain to become creative. But the other side of that, to answer your question, we see this over and over again, especially when we work with veterans with PTSD. The heart resets the baseline for a past trauma in the brain. The heart tells the brain it's over, like the past is over. And the person has a new view of their past, and they have a new view of their future.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing you say is, until we are able to heal our heart, we'll always stay stuck in a past that holds us back.
Yeah, well, look, it's not easy. When we work with the youth in our community, they have the same question. It's always like, how do I stay in my heart? Like, that's just an ongoing thing.
Yes.
This is something that's going to take a little practice. So you have to agree that when you feel resentment, when you feel impatience, when you feel frustration, it's a very different chemistry than when you feel love. More than 70% of the time, people are living by those emotions that are derived from the hormones of stress. To dial down the survival systems in the body and start teaching the body emotionally how it could feel goes against all the programming we've had about living in survival. Why would you open your heart in the jungle? You would be eaten, you would be prey, you would be vulnerable, right? So people get injured, they get bruised, and they'll say, this is not a conscious process, by the way. I'll never love like that again. I'll never open up like that again. The experience of the past that ruined my life and ruined this person, ruined my relation, my world and other relationships, that will never heal until the person finds love. Because when you feel love and you start releasing different chemicals like oxytocin, and our data shows that some people that we study, their oxytocin levels are off the chart. It's not a little love, it's a lot of love. We see that some people's amplitudes of heart coherence are 3 times higher than other people. It's like there's a big resonance going on the heart. It's a lot of energy going to the brain. And so when we're resentful, when we're judgmental, when we're impatient, the brain is very incoherent as well. And the wave of energy from the heart to the brain causes the brain to get organized, causes it to get coherent, right? And so it's an art and a practice. So then people who truly have this moment where they start wanting to feel this emotion instead of the past, it's impossible for them to hold a grudge. They're feeling so good. They're like, listen, you're okay.
Let it go. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like, I'm going to forgive you now. Remember, I'm forgiving you. Like, it's not like that. It's more like, it's all good. Like, I don't belong to the past anymore. And they see their past in terms of a level of consciousness that's instrumental for them to gain wisdom. And the memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom. And that's when you belong to the future instead of the past.
You think we need to forgive in order to heal then?
Yes, I do. And forgiveness is taking your attention off that person or problem. The only way you do that is overcome the emotion. Because the stronger the emotion you have to some person or some past event, the more you pay attention to it. Where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So you're giving your power away, your life force, to that person or that problem. Lower the volume to that emotion, and I don't care if it takes a whole day. We have people that have to lower the volume of that emotion. They keep lowering the volume of that emotion. They keep taking their attention off that person or problem. The body is an unbridled horse. It's just insisting on wanting to be aroused. The person, instead of getting up and quitting or grabbing their cell phone or laying down or whatever, they're in the fire. They've lit the match in the dark place, and now the game is on. And if they keep lowering the volume to that emotion, keep taking their attention off that person, every time they lower the volume to that emotion, they're telling the body it's no longer the mind. They're telling it, I am the mind. And sooner or later, the animal, the body, is going to acquiesce. It's going to surrender. And when it does, there's a liberation of energy. The heart opens up and the person feels completely different. Now, that's when that occurs, they see their past, and some of them say, I don't want to change one thing in my past. It's perfect. I would have never gotten to this moment unless I've been through all of this. And we've had people, you can't say you've had a horrible past any longer, because we have people that have been raped and abused every day of their life, physically, emotionally, mentally, violently, night tremors, suicidal tendencies, all kinds of health conditions. One moment, their heart opens and all of a sudden they see it all. They see their betrayers. They have nothing but forgiveness for them.
Wow.
Their body heals, their mind heals. They completely change. They have another opportunity in life, right? So it's not a bad practice to intentionally create the emotions that are good for you. And if you keep doing it over and over again, just like anything, it'll get easier for you to feel it. And I think if you practice that enough times and you have a different consciousness, when you show up in a relationship, doesn't matter what kind of relation, intimate relationship, relationship with your friends, relationship with your dog, relationship with
Coworkers or boss.
coworkers or whatever. There's an air about a person who is poised, that's relaxed in their heart and awake in their brain, so much so that that's so much better than being stressed out, unconscious, and living in a program, that it's noticeable. And we're doing these studies on facial recognition, because one of the things that happens at the end of a 7-day event is people return back into their life and people say to them, you look completely different. Like, what happened to you? And we were right down to the stitch. We have these, algorithms that are looking at all the facial patterns, and people are literally changed. Their face is different at the end of 7 days. So when the energy moves from the heart to the brain, there's just a whole different expression, right? We start to bloom, in a sense. And then the question is, that consciousness considers the whole. The consciousness of love is holistic. It always considers the whole. Like, how is this going to affect the whole? Like, it's no longer selfish. The first 3 energy centers of the body have everything to do with the self, right? And this is a selfless state. This is, how can I give? When you give, you release an enormous amount of oxytocin. It feels like you're receiving if you do it, genuinely. You're kinder. You're more caring. You're more present. You're more loving. You're more intentional. You're more relaxed. And that's the natural state of being. And you got to practice feeling that way. And then the last step is that when you're not there, valid, justified or not, as the reason why the only person that's hurting is you, can you break the addiction in that moment and convert from those emotions of frustration or anger or judgment or whatever, when you're rallied? Can you be intelligent enough emotionally to say, let me see if I can settle myself down? I mean, that would be the greatest victory. Because I think when it's the hardest, it matters the most.
Yes.
And then after that point, it gets easy, right? So I think that people interpret love in a lot of different ways. But when people truly, really mine for it within themselves, and they hit that moment, I think the greatest thing that they realize is that it's not coming from anyone or anything out there. It's been within them the whole time. This cracks open, and now they are love. It's not like they have to practice being love. The side effect of that moment is they're more free. They're more in love with life. They see beauty.
So interesting we're saying this, because we want to be selfless and be thinking outward thinking. How do we give? How do we contribute, right? But we also need to be selfish in some ways and say, I'm not looking for someone to give me love, to feel loved. I'm going to create the love within me, and therefore we have to be selfish in some ways to.
But that's not selfish. That's honoring yourself in a way that when this is the plane of demonstration, yes. you got to demonstrate who you want to be. This is where you got to practice. This is the theater. You got to get out there and you got to demonstrate what love would do. Like and the soul is the soul is really interested in that. Like, that's what it wants. It wants the adventure. It wants to get out of survival finally, and begin to experience a whole different set of events in our life that we create. So is it possible then that a person can get so good at feeling that way that when they present themselves in a relationship, you could feel their love? Like, then they're sovereign. Like, a person who truly feels love is going to be okay with you. They're going to just be okay with you. A person who's resentful, a person who resents themselves is going to resent others. People who hate themselves are going to hate others. People who judge themselves are going to judge others. So a person who's grateful, a person who's in love with life, who practices that intentionally, they're not going to knee-jerk as fast, because they're going to know the difference between constantly living there and then getting their body out of stress and survival and moving it back into homeostasis. And we discovered when you get a person back into homeostasis, the body has the innate capacity to heal itself. That's what it does when it's back in balance.
Yes. Is there a moment someone can understand when they're fully healed? Is there like a moment in the body or the brain where you feel like, oh, I'm actually healed. I'm not going into fight or flight anymore in these moments. I'm not triggered anymore. Is there a moment where people can feel fully healed?
Yeah, God, this is a great conversation. I'll see if I can answer it simply. We have a group of language specialists from the University of Central Oklahoma that study the language of transformation. And they found us, and they were just blown away. And they have these computer algorithms where they study like the language of our community, and independent, by the way, of your native language for any country you're from. At the end of 7 days, everybody speaks use the same words, we use the same language. So a new culture is created, right? So the power behind that is amazing. So when we're looking at people, there's two ways that we discover this process of transformation. One is the immediate way, and this is happening more, but I'll give you the short version. If you could practice dialing down your thinking brain, your neocortex, the mechanism here that plugs you into three-dimensional reality, the autobiographical self, the repository of everything you've learned and experienced up until this moment. If you can practice lowering your brain waves from beta to alpha, alpha being that dreamy creative state, into a brainwave called theta. When you're in theta, you're in a hypnotic state. And when you're in a hypnotic state, you're very suggestible to information. And suggestibility is your ability to accept, believe, and surrender to information without analyzing it. And without analyzing it, whether it's true or not. And that goes right into the subconscious, and it begins to program the subconscious, right? But if you're in a state of theta, now imagine this, you're in a suggestible state, a hypnotic state, but your eyes are closed. The music is filling the space of the room. You're not eating, you're not tasting, you're not smelling, you're not feeling with your body. But the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is wide open because you've suppressed your analytical mind. That's what separates it. We discovered when people just go a little outside of normal in theta, and they put their awareness on, instead of the particle in quantum physics, the wave, instead of matter and energy, they open their awareness. If the brain's in the right state, all of a sudden we see this arousal take place in the nervous system where they move into these very elegant, very high states of gamma brain waves. And the gamma is like super consciousness. And it's not a little gamma. It's not a lot of gamma. It's not a whole lot of gamma. It's a supernatural amount of gamma. And we see it over and over again. In fact, we had a neuroscientist from UC San Diego at our last event in Denver last week, and she was doubting, a lot, and she saw it on the 128 lead brain scan. And she was like, we gotta measure all the time. I'm like, I know, I've been telling you this. But it's all the gamma is taking place in the limbic brain, right under the neocortex, the seat of the autonomic nervous system. The automatic nervous system is on fire, and the frequency is super high, it's super coherent, and it's compressed. And the autonomic nervous system controls and coordinates all other systems. So when a person connects to energy, they're in that right state, suggestible to information, all frequency carries information, right? So now they're suggestible, but they're not getting it through their senses. They're getting it from the field, right? And when the brain is coherent, it can become entrained, and then it acts as a transducer, and the autonomic nervous system goes into these gamma states, and every single cell in the body is being informed by new information, and the body is lifted by light. It's lifted by energy. When that occurs, we see an instantaneous healing that goes on with a person. Like, there's the Parkinson's, now it's gone. There's the eczema, now it's gone. There's the stage 4 cancer, now it's gone. There's the muscular dystrophy, now it's gone. There's a spinal cord injury, now it's gone. There's the blindness, now it's gone. There's an upgrade that takes place. So that's instantaneous. And we see that more and more these days. It's an event. It's a moment. It's an inner event that is changing a person's biology. And if all disease is a lowering of frequency, I believe, and an incoherent pattern, this coherent energy is literally lifting the body with light, right? And so we see an automatic, instantaneous upgrade. It's miraculous. So that's the instantaneous one that we see. In the study of the language of transformation, many times people are going from one personality to another personality, and they know that they have to change. And a lot of people say, well, I believe this works. I've seen all the testimonials. I really believe in it. I just didn't believe it would work for me. It's a big moment because you got to get out of the bleachers. You got to get on the playing field. You got to show up every day, because if you're going to believe in that possibility, you got to believe in yourself. And if you got to believe in yourself, you got to believe in the possibility. And your belief in yourself must be earned, right? You got to show up, right? So one of the consistent things that happen with a lot of these people that cross the river of change is some of them do their meditations for a year, for 8 months, for 13 months, for 2 years. All along, they're changing. All along, they notice that the more they change, the less pain they have. They're sleeping better through the night. They can eat more than 10 foods. They have more energy.
Less reactive. Yeah.
They're starting to notice that something's changing. And then in time, they start to notice that their body starts to change, right? And that's all they need. Because the moment they notice something changing, they're going to pay attention to what they're doing, and they're going to do it again. But now their belief is going to be amplified because they're noticing it. So now they're more intentional. Now they're more present. Now they're assigning meaning to the act a little bit more. And many people will say, I just knew, in this one meditation, I just knew I was going to be okay. Like, I just knew it. Like, I just knew. But don't forget, they're showing up every day for 8 months or 13 months or a year or 2 years. They're not missing a day, because if they missed a day, then they wouldn't believe that they're the creator of their life. So according to the language specialist, the person who has that big gamma moment, their description of the experience is the number one thing that they speak about is what they felt. In fact, I've had people on the stage describe their experience, and they're weeping, and there's the most incredible experience of their life. And I'm like, will you please tell the audience? Oh yeah, I was blind. Now I can see. Yeah, like the upgrade wasn't as profound as the experience that they had. Like, and so,
what is that feeling that they have when they feel healed?
So it's a great question. So the language specialists have divided it into 2 categories. One is very somatic. Like, every single cell in my body was filled with light. It was like my heart exploded like an engine, like energy shot down my fingertips like a lightning bolt. The top of my head blew off. It's very somatic, right? It's very somatic. It felt like this, but they're using metaphors. It's not like that. The other element is very emotional. Like they say, I never felt love like that in my life. I forgot how that I'm connected. I forgot that there's a divine intelligence in me. I feel more bliss, more ecstasy. I feel more grateful for life. It's very emotional, but they'll say, no, but that's not it. It's not like any feeling that I've ever had before, right? So remember, the end product of an experience is an emotion. So their inward experience that they're having is so transcendental, and it's coming with an emotion, and the emotion tends to be less chemical. Tends to be more electric. It feels like it's like a profound level of energy. Stronger the emotion you feel, and that's happening, the more you're going to remember what's going on between your ears, right? The people who cross the river of change that take time, when they pop up and they see a new landscape, when they see a future and they know it, they become less obsessed and worried or desperate about what their future looks like. Even sometimes if they're, and we just had someone on the stage the other day, even when they were getting worse, they were like, I know I'm going to be okay. Like, I'm just going to keep doing this. I know I'm going to be okay. And they just kept showing up. And then all of a sudden their values started to change, and the next thing starts to change. And they just, and many of them say, I just got to this point where I just liked myself so much. I was so grateful for everything that I'm learning. I really could care less if I have the disease, and that's the moment it goes away, right? Because they're no longer identifying with it any longer. That's the moment where they're free, right? So they've changed so much that they're happy, and they're no longer identifying with themselves as that personality any longer. And so many people will say, God, I would have never become this person if I didn't have that disease.
Wow.
I would have never become wealthy if I didn't have to spend that time in jail or go bankrupt. I would never be this guy. I'm so happy. I'm so happy all of that happened. It was all purposeful good for me to become this person, right? So that
It's a level of appreciation for everything in the past.
exactly.
Not a level of resentment and
Exactly.
anger and frustration and
And many people will say, "Oh my God, like the disease, it exists in that person. I'm not that person. I'm someone else." And there's a sense of temporality that we see in the language as well. The language says, like, I'm here as this person, and I'm not the same person. It hasn't been the same person. I've been changing all along, and that was somebody else. The disease exists in that unhappy person.
It's interesting because you talked about in the beginning that every want we have comes from a feeling of separateness or lack.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. But it's almost like what you're describing right now is people are now separate from their old person that had the behaviors, the attitude, the values.
Completely different person.
Now they're separate from the person that was living in lack, suffering, disease. They're not identifying as that person anymore.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. They put in their time to break down that unlearning of that 95%. They had to stop thinking one way and start thinking another way. That's not easy, especially if you're hardwired to think a certain way. You gotta come up against yourself. They have to stop acting one way and start acting another way. Stop doing certain things, start doing other things. Stop feeling one way, start feeling another way. They got to break the habit of their old self and reinvent a new self. And the 95% is the overcoming process. And we discovered that the overcoming process is actually the becoming process. And that is the work, right? That's why it's so important for people to come up against themselves at our immersive experience. In the 7-day events, I want people to come right up against those programs because they're never going to face off with them unless they're just sitting there. They have to decide, do I really want to believe this any longer? Do I really want to feel this? Do I really want to hold on to this memory? Do I really want to complain anymore if I want to be happy? I'm never going to be happy if I'm complaining. Complaining makes me unhappy, right? So there's this kind of essence that starts to emerge out of the human being when they're in the fire there and they're struggling and they keep working, as tedious as it may seem in the beginning. When they start, disinvesting and objectifying their subjective self, when they start turning that around, it's natural then. It's natural for them to start dreaming again. It's natural for them to start believing in their future, and they start feeling really worthy, really worthy of their future.
I heard you say that people have had these, divine healings at your events and your week-long events, and they come up on stage and talk about instantaneously having these incredible healings, and they've never felt this feeling before. I'm curious, and I've been to your week-long event, and I've heard you talk at the end of the event. This is what I heard you say a few years ago, that you love life and you love God and your relationship with God. I'm curious, how has your relationship evolved with God in your life over the last few years?
For me, I don't really say the God word much.
I heard it once at your event, at the very end of the event.
Yeah, because I think I may have said something like, don't make this work be about me. I want it to be about you. And I'm just a person who loves the divine. I love God. I love the unknown, right? So that really translates for me into a personal relationship with the divine within me. It's a time to connect with it, to be present with it, to meet it in love, to surrender to it. And I think you gotta bring it to life. You gotta bring it into your life by becoming aware of it. And it is a mystery because it's the unseen. And it turns out there's more information in the immaterial than there ever will be in the material, right? And so the mystery of the unknown, the mystery of whatever that unseen force is, that intelligence, that singularity, the source, the oneness, whatever you want to call it, it exists in every human being. And if you want to hide it really well, put it within, and people look everywhere else for it. So it's been a process of investigation for me since 1986, and having a love affair with the divine within you and making time to be present with it and to have a relationship with it and connect with it, I think it works in really wonderful and mysterious ways. So
What's your relationship like these days with the divine or God or whatever you call it for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge that I have in my life, given my schedule and the amount of hours that I travel, is to really prioritize that. You know, one of the things that has been very helpful for me is to set my cell phone down after 7 o'clock at night, just to set it down and do things that normal people would do if they didn't have technology, whether it's bedding out in nature or going to the beach or taking a scooter ride or working in your garden or reading a book or sitting outside and watching the birds. It's just, I think it's really good. That's all part of the process. So for me, I think, you know, one of the challenges that I have if I was being vulnerable would be like having the time when I'm traveling to go as deep as I want, because with these events that we run, we're up at 5 a.m. and we finish at 7:30 or 8 at night. I mean, I'm doing the meditations while I'm leading. I'm doing it with everybody, but I would say that would be something that I would want to get, you know, have more time for. So it's a sacrifice, right?
Do you ever, I mean, I don't think I've ever heard you talk about this stuff either personally or just publicly, but do you ever have conversations with the divine or God or?
Yeah, I do. I think synchronizing your heart to your brain, I think the brain may think, but the heart knows. And we practice a lot synchronizing the heart to the brain. And if you can synchronize the heart to the brain and they have the same energy, then they're the same frequency. And if they're the same frequency, then they can exchange information. So I've had profound moments where my heart has spoken to me, and I think it's the greatest guide that we'll ever have.
Wow.
And I've gone against it, by the way, numerous times, and 100% of the time I've been wrong, thinking that I know better.
Or tricking it or something.
It's too inconvenient. I don't want to do that, you know. And ultimately, I had to make the choice anyway. So,
do you think when God or the divine speaks to us, God speaks to our mind or to our heart, our body, or our souls?
I don't know. Like, I don't know. I think it's an impulse. Like it's a opening. And you know, I give you an example. My friend the other day was telling me that he went for a hike with his dog, and he's my trainer. He lost his keys, and he was fretting about it. I know his personality, and he told me I went up that path 3 times. Then I walked up and down, couldn't find the keys. He goes, then I waited the next morning. I went back up with the dog. I walked, I checked everywhere. And he goes, I couldn't find my keys to my house or whatever it was. His car keys, maybe it was, or all of his keys. And then he says, I went and did your meditation. He said, I did an 1.5-hour meditation. He said, right in the middle of the meditation, he said, I just saw that like a screen opened up and I saw the keys right between this crack, right next to the bench where I was sitting. And he goes, and I went there, I ran there. And he goes, they were just like the picture, right there. So that's information, right? That's what we have access to. That is the divine, right? That is it. Like when you're open, that is to him just as important as the person who's healed. They just connect with information, different frequency, right? So,
because the information is there in the world. The keys are somewhere. There's information in this 3-dimensional world of where they are.
Yeah, and in the quantum too. The information is in the quantum too, right? So the point is that the opportunities are endless if you're really getting good at dialing into information. So, is it important to me? Absolutely. Do I know like the biological changes that take place of a person putting more attention on the unseen than on the seen, more attention on the immaterial than the material? If they do that for 7 days, I can tell you that Their brain's going to be better. It's going to be more coherent. It's going to be less compartmentalized, less modulated. Their brains are going to look like they're on psilocybin. That's what our data shows. The default mode network in the brain is going to shut off, which means you're not going to be trying to always anticipate the next moment. You'll be more in the present moment. Your heart works better. Your microbiome changes dramatically without changing your diet. There's information in the plasma of advanced meditators that create an immunity to spike viruses. We've published a paper on it. We've isolated the protein, that information. There's information in the plasma of advanced meditators that shut off 70% of mitochondrial function in cancer cells just by interacting with that invisible field of energy, right? There's information that 100% of the people that we measured in 63 different diseases, 100% of them were making their own endogenous opioids, natural pain relievers that create euphoria, independent of the disease.
In the inner pharmacy, not something they're taking, but inside.
Just by connecting to information, that invisible field. There's information in the plasma of advanced meditators that create new nerve cells, growing new neurons, neurogenesis, right? So this field of order, this field of information, by connecting to it, the greater the order, the greater the information, the greater the frequency, the greater the consciousness, the greater the effects in our human biology. So we now know the breast milk of lactating moms at the end of 7 days, a completely different expression of breast milk.
Wow.
Completely different. There's proteins in their milk that are anti-cancer, that promote all kinds of healing and wound healing. There's just a plethora of chemistry that's created from this interaction with this invisible field of energy. And I always say to the scientists, where is that information coming from? Where is it coming from? I mean, how can you have all these metabolites all of a sudden in the blood that weren't there before at the beginning of 7 days? Well, when the nervous system is tuned and the thinking brain is dialed down, your autonomic nervous system is the chemical brain. It is the emotional brain. It's going to begin to transduce the information in the form of frequency into biology and chemistry. And so all of these regulatory factors and metabolites are upregulating for growth, for repair. There's new neurons sprouting, right? The cell is greater than the environment. Put a virus there and it cannot enter the cell. You know, it downregulates the genes for Alzheimer's. That's royal blood. So this field is actually real. So that's the mystery. It's not like God, some white guy on the beard, on a laptop, keeping track of Lewis and going to send him to a hot place for all of eternity,
Right.
It's not that. It is the mystery of the unseen. It's the mystery. If the probability that we're perceiving the truth of reality is zero, it's zero. That's the mathematics. In other words, our brains are wired to filter out anything that's not material. We're basically seeing the wavelength, the small frequency band of visible light, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, that small bandwidth. That frequency is bouncing off the most stable form of energy called matter, and it's fooling us into this illusion of separation. That's a very small percentage of reality. That's less than 1% of reality.
Wow.
So then put less of your attention on the material and more of attention on the immaterial. Disinvest all of your attention out of three-dimensional reality and teach people that that field is real. Have them feel it. Have them experience it. Have them relax into it. Have them fall in love with it. Have them pay attention to it. Stay aware of it. Become more of it and less of them. Somehow, that's reflected in their biology. There's dramatic changes that take place. So the mystery of whatever that is, God or whatever, to me, that's the excitement. And once again, the data is unbelievable. It's not like 10% of the population has a 2 standard deviation change in their right temporal lobe. It's not like that. It's like 77%, 84%, 90%, 95%, 100% of the community is having these effects at the end of 7 days.
Wow.
And think about it. I mean, we do genetic studies, independent of the person's genome, their individual genome. Genes make proteins. At the end of 7 days, people behaving in the same way, learning the same information, doing the same things, creating the same feelings. At the end of 7 days, 80% of the people are expressing the same genes, making the same proteins. That means there's an emergent consciousness that's taking place biologically when people behave in the same way that's reflected in their gene expression. In other words, the flock, the herd, the tribe is evolving collectively together because they're sharing the same consciousness. So people change people. Then you interact with somebody in that state, and the person's grateful, and you're in love, and they're in love, and you see the divine in them, and they see the divine in you, and you're coherent, and you're clear, and you've kind of managed your attention and your emotions, and you're kind of out of that personality. It's bound to start creating all kinds of health changes in people as a side effect of it.
Yes.
And it's not uncommon that someone stands on the stage that has a certain health condition. I saw it happen just a couple months ago, or a guy with Parkinson's disease. He horrible. He lost his memory. Then he lost his hearing. Then he lost his eyesight.
Oh.
And then he couldn't move. He got paralyzed on one side of his body. He had tremors. He had a lot of pain. He was drooling on himself. He was frozen in prison. I saw him on the stage. He says, no cane. He's walking. He has nothing. No effect, right? He's his complete reversal of the condition without taking anything.
In 7 days.
And well, he was doing the work, and then he came to the event,
yeah.
and then it happened, right? He had his moment. But what it speaks to is that 4-minute mile where somebody in the audience is like, this dude doesn't look any different than me. He's in his 60s. He looks a little overweight. He's wearing a baseball cap. I'd probably walk past him on the street. But he's the example of truth. And there were so many people in that audience that had Parkinson's disease, and he was the hope. He was the light for them.
That's cool.
They're like, if he can do it, I can do it. And then all of a sudden, just like an infection spreads amongst a community and creates disease, now you see health and wellness becoming as infectious as disease. You know, we had 5 people step out of a wheelchair at one event last year in Denver. We had 5 people with Raynaud's syndrome in the UK that one person stood on the stage, another person stood on the stage, and it just happened just like that with 2 people that were blind. 2, not 1, but 2 got their vision back. I couldn't believe it, right? It's just, it's a footprint in consciousness, right? That people can step into when you see that stage testimonial. And so I want it to be to the point where you see it and you can't go back to business as usual. That's what's happened to me in the last 6 months. Like, I've seen stage testimonials that have changed my belief in what's possible.
Wow.
I consider myself an open-minded person.
You've seen a lot of healings also over the years.
Right, but it just keeps getting better. It just keeps getting, like, how did that happen? Like, how did that person make that dramatic change? Like, woman had her colon and rectum surgically removed from cancer, literally grew a whole new rectum, whole new colon. And I saw the scans. It's not scar tissue. It's juvenile, healthy, regenerated, brand new tissue, brand new rectum and colon.
Wow.
What does that mean? What does that mean? It means the human body has the innate capacity to regenerate itself at any age. She's in her 70s or late 60s. Given the right information. Like, we've been programmed into something else. So when you see that, it's unbelievable, right? It stretches my belief in what's humanly possible. But if one person can do it, it means that anybody can do it. Right?
Wow. I'm curious about this. You know, for the last, let's say, 10 years, meditation and therapy has both been more the mainstream. A lot of people talking about meditation, a lot of people doing therapy. And a lot of people just broken, right? Just broken and feeling like they need healing. Do we actually need traditional therapy in your mind to heal? Or can meditation, mindset, breath work help us heal trauma just as fast?
Yeah, we're doing a study in December to answer that question, a randomized control study. And we're using veterans in special ops in San Diego. And we're going to most of these men and women probably don't know anything about me. and we're randomly selecting them, and they're going to come. We're pretty confident because we've seen enough of them break through. I mean, you tell a Navy SEAL, get that heart of yours open, reset the baseline for trauma in the brain. They're not going to say, "Oh, I can't do it." They're going to be like, "I'll do it, sir."
Wow.
I mean, they'll do it.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So we're going to compare the PTSD when a person goes through a 7-day retreat with some clinical, cognitive neuroscience and therapy, and compare the two models and with a control to see which does the best. But here's my answer to that. I really think it's a function of the therapist. Like if the therapist is present, the therapist has a good way to help a person not only have an insight, like insight really doesn't change behavior. You could say your father was overbearing or your father was never present, but it doesn't change your behavior in any way. It just actually validates it in a certain way. It's kind of like you excuse yourself for being this way. So the insight doesn't change the behavior, but if there's a practical tool that the person can do, whatever that is, whatever it is to help them to behave differently and to function to a greater degree in their life, right? And so many people who come to the week-long event that have been bruised or been damaged or have been traumatized, many of them can function better in their world because they've gotten over their past to some degree. Now, again, everybody's at different stages. Everybody's had a different past. But when we look at the changes that are taking place in the majority of people, we're pretty confident that it's good for people. It's good for people to do.
Therapy?
No, if you said compare the therapy against the meditation and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then of course there's different types of meditations, right? And then it just gets complicated. So if you find something that you feel good about, do it.
Yeah. Do more of it.
Yeah, do more of it.
Try multiple things if you need.
Sure, of course.
Is there something that you think cannot be manifested?
Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
because you've seen a lot of people do some amazing things.
Well, I mean, I'm weird, in that way. I'm always pushing the envelope of what's humanly possible. I mean, there's just kind of the more of the academic, analytical mind of myself that is always dovetailing concepts to build this bigger model of what's possible. So, and that's kind of a fascination of something that I love to do. I've never stopped doing that. It's always going on in my mind. I enjoy the process of looking closely and dovetailing things together. But there was a side of me that was exposed to, books when I was in my late teens and early 20s that caused me to think differently. Whether it was the life and teachings of the masters from the Far East, or Yogananda's books, or these books about these yogis and masters that could do all kinds of really amazing things. I never forgot that. That was always kind of like, how did they do it? Did they know about the mind, the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, and how were they able to disappear in one place and reappear in another? How did they do manifest things out of nothing? How did they do it? And so I always had that preoccupation going on in the back of my mind. So what I find really important in the work that I do is to create the challenge within the realm of the person's, right outside their acceptance, right? I mean, no one changes unless they're challenged, and that's the only way we're going to change, right? So we when we run our events, we challenge people to that extent where they're going to have to go past where they normally stop. That's the truth. Is that's where the greatest change actually takes place. So if a person then has the understanding, like, okay, if I healed myself, and this has happened, people have healed themselves numerous times, that's a new experience. That's not an experience. I'm not just talking about healing a cut or a sore throat or whatever, or an earache. I'm talking about healing a chronic health condition, which, by the way, requires change, lifestyle change. I heal myself. Is it possible that I can heal another person? Okay. what is the science behind that? Where can I find the information to build a model that I could actually practice this? And we now know that we've got unbelievable data that people heal when other people can have a coherent brain and a coherent heart and change the information in the person's field. They can change the destiny of matter. We know that. Okay, so the person heals another person, and then pandemic happens, and now we can't run events. And so can people get together and do remote coherence healings? Now, remote means that the subject is somewhere in Sweden, and the rest of the healers are spread around the globe. And all they need is a picture, a coordinate. In the quantum, everything's connected. The thought of that picture or that person connects you to that person in the quantum, right? So again, evolving the model. Yeah, I've healed myself. I've done in-person healings. Now I should be able to heal remotely. And we have people that are unbelievable. I mean, we did a double-blind placebo study on the effects of remote coherence healings with PTSD. And what we found was that 9 out of 10 people who received the remote coherence healings no longer had PTSD.
Really?
9 out of 10. There's no therapy, there's no pharmaceutical that does that, right? So what does that mean? It means we must be all connected, right? Now, I've had this experience, I've had this experience, and I've had this experience. Because I've had this experience, I can think about other experiences that are possibilities. And so I've always tried to take a very methodical approach, very methodical. If we did this, we can do this, we can do this, and we can keep going. So then if we keep measuring it and we keep demystifying the process, we could actually create a greater language for transformation by gathering the information from our studies to teach transformation better. So I like to work methodically in a way that says, okay, I'm not going to say everybody's going to leave their body and go to the moon. Like we have a lot of steps in between, right? To get there. Now, when we do our advanced follow-ups, people who have gone through a week long, usually is theme-based, right? We'll do like dream time at night or molecules of the mystical or whatever it is. We'll do something that's an immersion for 3 days and 1 evening. These are people that meditate every day and they want to go further. So in those circumstances, yes, I push the group for creating a greater degrees of manifestation. But in the quantum, I'll just say this. A gold coin is no different than a feather. $100,000 is no different than a penny. A house in the quantum is no different than, your health. It's all the same, right? We just assign value to it, thinking, oh, that's bigger or that's kind of more expensive. But that's the field is objective, right? So we've seen all kinds of people manifest all kinds of crazy things. So do I think it's possible to keep evolving that? Yeah, I do. Do I think there's a limit to it? Based on the exposure I have to the masters from the Far East and based on what I'm seeing, in our community, I'm hopeful that we get better at it.
I mean, I've seen people at your events go from healing themselves to now healing each other in person, and now you guys are studying and getting the research on remote healing, looking at a photo of someone, thinking about them at a different location around the world, sending healing energy their way, and them receiving the healing.
Double-blind placebo study, too.
Double-blind placebo study. What's the next level of something that you haven't tested yet that you think could be a potential?
Yeah.
That is the new 4-minute mile?
Yeah, gosh.
Maybe it's not we're landing on the moon physically in a moment, but what is that next level of remote healing? Then what?
Well, I think because your consciousness is moving remotely, right? Consciousness is non-local. So the next thing would be to create an effect on something in an environment in some way, whatever it is, like temperature in an environment, of causing a flower to bloom, doing something collectively. Influencing matter, yeah. Or it may be cool for, and I've had this happen to me a few times where you meet somebody in another state, like you're without your body.
You're like in a different world, having a conversation, connecting with them.
Exactly. I mean, it's possible, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's fascinating.
So, but like our
And you
data.
both know you had the same conversation?
Oh yeah. We did it.
Really?
Yeah, it took us a week.
Wait,
to
you've
get-
done this?
Yeah, it took us a week to do it.
Come on. You
Yeah,
did this?
one of my best friends. Yeah.
What? So you were, what? You walk me through this. What happened? Tell me.
Wow, this is okay.
So a remote conversation.
No,
With a phone.
so
A remote meeting.
all right. So my one of my closest friends, he's a super cool guy, and years ago we were just fascinated by the mystical and fascinated about out of body stuff, and we were putting a lot of time into it, right? And I said to him, okay, if you get out of body tonight, I'm gonna be doing something. Come and find out what I'm doing.
Really?
And
Come meet me.
yeah, well, I was conscious. I wasn't.
You're awake.
I'm awake. I'm doing something, and
No way.
And
Come on.
I was reading a book
Come
on
on.
his couch, and he literally read the first couple of
he
lines.
did
Yeah, he
not.
did.
Come on.
Yeah. So then we're like, okay, that happened.
Wow.
Let's meet somewhere in consciousness. Let's meet somewhere. So it took us a week, right?
Both asleep.
Yeah, we sleep at the same time. We just picked a coordinate, whatever that was. We just came up with a symbol or whatever, which meant we're meeting there, right, wherever that is. So I'm moving through this corridor, and there's all these doors, and I see these purple drapes, beautiful, like vibrant purple drapes. And I run through the drapes, and he's there.
Come on. No way.
No, it's crazy. I should probably not tell.
And he did the same thing?
Oh, well, so here's what we just have this whole interaction, right, about one of my dogs, right? One of my dogs. So anyway, I come back and I wake up and I'm like, oh my God. And I forget about it, right? Because I get my day going, and I don't know what we were doing on my ranch, but I had to go to the lumber store. And I get to the lumber store and he's there.
No.
And he's like, dude, were you behind the drapes? I'm like,
No, he did not.
I
Come
said,
on.
I was totally behind the drapes. We just started laughing.
Holy cow.
So anyway, that's a little extensive for
Wow. So it's meeting each other in consciousness, in the field.
in the field. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we can get good at that. I think, I think that there's.
Now here's an interesting thing. Can we?
You're going to take me way off topic down this rabbit hole.
Can we meet people who are no longer with us
Of course.
and have deep, meaningful conversations
Of course.
with
That
them?
happens all the time at our events.
Really?
All the time. But it happens so many times when people lay down after a meditation and they're in theta and they're not quite awake and they're not quite asleep, and all of a sudden here comes their deceased father and says, I'm so sorry that I was so absent or so brutal. I love you and I'm with you. And the memory of that experience replaces all the memories of the past. The person is healed, That happens many times, many times, a lot. Yes. So yeah, that happens as a side effect.
That's incredible. Okay, so you think that's what might be coming next, these types of things?
Well, again, there's consciousness is the totality of all space-time. All of space-time is constructed by consciousness. So what's on the other side of space-time is a whole nother realm, and that's why we do the pineal gland meditation, because we want people to actually wake up in a different time. I think one of the biggest lies we've been told is that we're linear beings living a linear life. I think we're dimensional beings living a dimensional life. And I think there's an infinite number of Lewis's, from a soul perspective, it's existing right now. And when when you pierce through that veil and you kind of see how beautiful the universe is, right? And how we can have a greater understanding of this whole thing. I think the pineal gland teaching is really about traveling through dimensions, right? Having a transcendental moment that where you get information that's not in this three-dimensional world, and it changes you on a fundamental level so that you understand who you are to a greater degree.
So the biggest lie we've ever been told is that we are linear beings living a linear life.
Yeah.
It's not that, but that we are dimensional beings living a dimensional life.
Yeah, and when the doors of dimension open to you, there's latent systems in the brain that we're discovering that have to be activated. And once those latent systems are activated, it's like you have a radio receiver in your brain. You awaken a latent system, and it could connect to energy and information. And again, like who we think we are, we're actually not, right? So
I've seen the documentary, The Source, that you have, that is all of the different research of your events over many years and the data of the cells transforming and upgrading and the healings occurring from so many different individuals. I've been to your events. I've worn the brain mapping devices. I've done some of the lab work myself. I've experienced transformation of myself. I've experienced deeper levels of peace and wholeness and coherence. And that's really in the last, 5 to 7 years since I've first, I think, interviewed you maybe around 7, 8 years ago, that I've seen this and seen the progression of your work in the world and the impact it's made in the world. If you can go 10 years in the future, 2035, what type of experiments, results, and things are happening with your work and around the world for those that commit to deeper levels of meditation, deeper levels of healing, deeper levels of upgrading their personality to create new realities? What do you see in 10 years with the level of progress you've already made to where it's heading?
the research from Source, it's within you, that documentary, that research is 3 years old. So we've got tons of more research that's really exciting. As an example, we gave 700 people a heart rate monitor to wear at our 10-day event in Cancun in December of last year. And we had 264 healthy subjects, and then the rest had some type of chronic health condition. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, cancer, whatever it was. And what we discovered, we've just started looking at the data. The 50 people that had anxiety, that had their own heart rate rhythms and all this kind of jagged lines, the moment they dropped into a meditation, their heart signatures were matching the healthy controls. Very first meditation, wow. And it went on for 10 days. So there's this entrainment non-locally that's taking place when people's hearts are open, and the strong somehow elevates the weak, right? So we have to investigate that a lot further. The mathematics we have, our Taiwanese mathematicians, they say the event is too good. Like there's no way that the mathematics say that this is a needle in the haystack for this to occur, and yet it does occur. The murmuration of what's being created from an emergent consciousness is everybody's being entrained to some invisible field, right? And we have to investigate that further. I just invested in a bunch of new equipment to measure body fat, muscle, lean body index, muscle strength, gait, posture. Why? Because of people stepping out of wheelchairs and dropping their crutches, and we know our preliminary data shows that people get taller. They have more muscle strength. Their lean body mass index changes. They have less body fat. They walk differently, right? So again, like this is all pieces of the puzzle. So we have so much data right now. We have so much data on the microbiome. Well, like our microbiome studies are just in 7 days, you have a completely different microbiome.
Crazy. That
means that you're not the same person. Same person has the same microbiome. So all these probiotic microbes are flourishing in people's bodies. And that's the microbiomes that suppress cancer, that respond to cancer treatment, that reduce inflammation. All these healthy microbes are just growing in the person's body. We have a voice, harmonicity. There's more harmonicity in a person's voice. Their language changes, their face changes,
wow.
Their blood changes, their breath changes. We have trillions of data points. So one day, we just did an extensive study on the breath, just studying breath. One day you'll be able to breathe into something and we can tell you what your microbiome looks like. We'll be able to take a snapshot of your face and determine if you have cancer. We'll be able to tell you after a meditation if your meditation was good just by, one small data point. The predictive model is insane. I mean, we have that many data points. So instead of having to put a brain cap on to determine if you had a good meditation, we have so many data points that we can enter at any point. So that's on the horizon. The conversations that we're having in medical schools right now, and with researchers, and not the conversations I was having 5 years ago, the mind-body connection is absolutely a reality. The human nervous system manufactures a pharmacy of chemicals that works better than any drug. That's what our data shows, right? And so we're interested in bringing this work into medical schools, and we've been asked to do that.
That's cool.
And it's really important because our data is so novel. It's not positive psychology. This is an immersive experience, right? And so why is that valuable? I find it valuable because we have to change the conversation in medicine. If chronic health conditions require a lifestyle change, that's 95% of our health problems, right? No one's teaching anybody how to change. You may know what you want to change or why you want to change, but you don't know how to change, right? So if there's 3 types of stress, physical, chemical, and emotional, there's 3 types of balance, physical, chemical, and emotional. Get 2 out of those 3 in place, the third one comes around. So why not introduce a course to medical students about the mind-body connection to show how effective it really is, and how meditation is the mediator of that. And then the person can be a plastic surgeon, or the person can be an oncologist, or the person could be a brain surgeon or dermatologist. But when they come across a person and they have to give them a diagnosis, when they give them the diagnosis and the person says, I think I want to do some meditation and I think I really want to change, and instead of saying that's junk, that doesn't work, the doctor will say, I encourage that.
Yeah.
I had the course in med school and I know it works. God, I think it's a great idea if you wanted to change to help this health condition. Let's just make sure in 3 months you come back and let's reevaluate. Do you want to do conventional treatment? Because I'll support you any way you want. But if you don't, then let's just keep measuring to make sure you're not getting worse. And if you're getting worse, we got to change it.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a different conversation that goes on. So there's that. And then, then there's just, we've been asked to bring this work into operating rooms, because many times the surgeon hates the anesthesiologist, the technician is in routine, and the nurses hate both the doctors. And, it's tough in there.
It's not a loving environment where you feel like,
you're not getting their best. So the chair of the Department of Anesthesiology at UCSD, she's a brilliant woman. And we've had numerous conversations where, like, can we get people intentional? Like, that's somebody's best friend down there.
Yeah.
That's somebody's kid, right?
Wow.
That's somebody's mom laying on the table. Can we set an intention? Can we get in our hearts? The best outcome. Can we connect? Can we make sure we're present? We make sure that we're, we have this person's best interest in mind. And by the way, this person actually believes 100% that their outcomes in surgical procedures will be better. That's why she's doing it. She's not doing it to just bring in the wu-wei, whales in space stuff. That's not it. She's not, that's not it. She's doing it because she actually believes that the efficacy of outcomes will improve because you got a group of people that are together, right? They're one mind, one heart, right?
I'm so glad you said that, because about a year ago, Martha, my wife, had to do an operation in Mexico, and to remove some stuff that was not needed in her body. And, it's a little nerve-wracking going in the operating room and this and that. And she asked me to come in there right before and kind of hold her hand before stuff happened. The doctor did something really beautiful. He was like, the 2 nurses were there and it was him, and he said, we're going to set an intention. We're going to pray right now. And for 2 minutes, it wasn't like this long, like, kumbaya thing or something. We're sitting down for an hour meditating or whatever. But it was for 2 minutes. He closed his eyes and he was breathing deeply and he was saying his intention. he was speaking in Spanish, so I was picking up a little bit, but he was like, my intention is this is going to go perfect, that Martha's going to have a full recovery, that this is going to go smoothly.
So important for the patient.
That we're going to be guiding our hands confidently, just speaking this calmly for a minute or two before an operation. I could feel myself calmer. I could see Martha being calmer and more relaxed. Surrendering and trusting it, which is the hardest thing.
Hardest thing.
And I was like, wow, I've never experienced that before. And I don't know if that was the more of the practice in Mexico. It might just be this doctor who is really awesome. But imagine having an intention for 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's what makes him an awesome doctor.
Exactly.
Right? So that's the new model. That's the new model, right?
That's
care,
cool.
putting care back in healthcare, right? So you can't be that when you're struggling just to get, insurance validation. You can't get that when you're 7 minutes per patient. It's very difficult. So I think there's an opening where people want something else.
Yes.
But if, 3 types of stress, physical, chemical, and emotional, 3 types of balance, physical, chemical, and emotional, you get somebody more physically balanced. Okay, what is that? Exercise, aerobics, yoga, massage, acupuncture, chiropractic, whatever it is to get your body back in physical balance.
Yes.
Then there's chemical balance, right? Take your vitamins, eat well, take your minerals, watch your blood sugar levels, hangovers, whatever, pesticides, pollutants, all that stuff creates a chemical imbalance. But most people can do the right things to get their body physically and chemically in balance. But 75 to 90% of every person that walks into a doctor's office in the Western world walks in because of psychological and emotional stress. That's 9 out of 10 people or 8 out of 10 people are showing up at their doctor's office because of their emotional responses to the things that are taking place in their life. And the emotional response that they're having is actually weakening the body, right? So we have a coalition. By the way, I didn't want to do this, but we had so many physicians and so many doctors and healthcare providers that are in our community saying, we can't, now we know we got to figure out a way to bring this to our patients. So we have this coalition called the Inner Health Coalition. We've done 8 trainings for doctors and healthcare providers. We just did our first in-person training in San Diego. Amazing group of people.
That's cool.
And again, the language has to be teased out. You have to make sense to the patient.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get you physically in balance. Let's get you chemically in balance. I don't care what you use. I don't care if you vitamins, minerals, pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is. I don't care what you do to get physically, what exercise you do, whatever it is. Just have something that intentionally is going to be something that'll be good for you. And now let's address the elephant in the room, right? Which is your emotional self-regulation. And so one of the things we did is we created these meditations for patients, while they're waiting for their doctor. Instead of sitting there and scrolling through
anxious.
things, you got to go in and you got to either create heart coherence, brain coherence, heart and brain coherence. And it's become really popular. People can actually practice them on their own. And think about it. If you react emotionally, and emotions are a record of the past, it makes sense as long as you feel that emotion, your body's going to go back to the same health condition because it's believing it's in the past, right? So, we've figured out a way to create a language for healthcare practitioners to take it a little bit further.
You said emotions are a record of the past. How do we make emotions a record of the future?
Yeah, so emotions are a record of the past. When a person feels an emotion that's connected to their past, it's entirely possible over time that their body's going to wind up with the same health condition because they're living by the same emotion. And the emotion is the information from the environment that's signaling the genes. So then the same exact thing. How many times do you want to open your heart to say, okay, let's just think about checks and balances here. I do this a lot at the end of my day. Okay, what part of my day was I living in an elevated emotional state?
Yeah.
And what part of my day was I not?
Reactive state. Yeah.
Or just not present,
Yeah.
or whatever that is. So to remember the future, you'd have to come out of your resting state. You'd have to make a decision with such firm intention to change that the amplitude of that choice carried a level of energy that caused your body to immediately respond to your mind. The stronger the emotion you feel, the more you remember the choice. And that moment becomes a long-term memory. That's when the person says, I remember exactly where I was when I made up my mind to change, because it's a long-term memory, right? And so when we do that really well, in a sense now, we're giving the body a taste, a sampling of the future emotionally. The body's being aligned to that future. Do that every day. Keep aligning it emotionally and bring up the emotional state and falling in love with your future, having the intention with the emotion. Keep doing that over and over again, and you're going to condition your body into the future. It's just the way it is, and you just got to stay with it. And sometimes it takes months, because you're going to weigh that 1 hour of a good meditation against 15 hours of you reacting and going back to your old self. And this is how people heal. They're like, I got to forgive my ex. This resentment is not worth my life, because the chemo, the radiation, the drug trial, the surgeries, the diets, none of that worked. So what are they left with? They're left with their belief in themselves. And so now they have to say, it's not worth it. It's not worth my life. Like, I'm just going to forgive, or I'm just going to change the way I am with that person, or my coworker, or my mother-in-law, or whoever, whatever that is the agitation. The person's saying, my life means too much to me. The only person that's suffering from this is me. Like, so is this really loving to me? And this is where people start to figure it out. This is where they're like, okay, my meditation now is, we're not doing mindfulness meditation. We are doing meditation to stay mindful, right? Like, we're doing it to stay conscious, right? To stay aware, to stay out of the programs that cause us to fall back into that old 95% of our identity. So the act of getting your brain and body right at the beginning of your day, and then saying, okay, no person, no circumstance, no condition. This is my game, right? I'm going to stay in this state. That doesn't mean you have to be a fanatic or creepy or any of that stuff, but you have to put more attention on your inner world, right? So when you live by stress and survival, the arousal causes you to throw all your attention out there, because that's where the threat is. That's where the danger is. So when we do our walking meditations, the whole purpose of the walking meditations is really to embody that person and get really good at doing it with your eyes open. Practice with your eyes open, being relaxed in your heart and awake in your brain. So you get better at it, in your life. So it is an ongoing practice to be able to think, act, and feel differently in the same environment. That's change, right? To be greater than the conditions in your life. So the person who heals, I got to get really good at doing this. And they start thinking, what would love do? What would greatness do? What would forgiveness look like? I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And they actually do it. And the experience then teaches them a lesson that they can feel differently. And that's the whole purpose of doing it.
Love this. I've got a few questions left for you. But I want people to really, whoever's listening and watching it right now, whether this is your first time seeing me and Dr. Joe connect, or I don't know how many times you've been on the show. I mean, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. Every time it just blows people away. If you haven't been to the week-long retreats, you need to run to your website. Go try to sign up if there's a spot left, because they sell out in like 30 minutes. Or get on the wait list for the next one that you can get onto. Because if you're feeling some type of blockage in your life, some type of stuckness, or you just don't feel like you're living up to the level or the standard is capable for you, you're just kind of on autopilot. This is one of the greatest week-long experiences I've done. And I've done everything. I've tried everything. I'm always experimenting. I'm always learning. And it doesn't mean other things not great also. But for me, it really helped me see things in person, how people can change. And when you can see others transforming by doing a practice consistently, you're like, wow, this person had this thing and now they don't have it. What's possible for me? And so I think it's important to be in a community where you can see transformation happening in front of your eyes. So make sure you guys sign up. There's 2 that you have coming up pretty soon. One in Nashville. It's a week-long advanced retreat, September 14th through the 20th. And you guys are offering $400 off registration. If you go to drjoedispenza.com right now, you guys can go and check out the Nashville one. I'd highly recommend it. Or there's one in Orlando, week-long advanced retreat. That's October 26th through November 1st. Again, make sure you guys go to drjoedispenza.com to either sign up, get on the wait list for the next one, because you have to go. If there's something, if you feel called in any way, sign up for it. It is extremely powerful. And you're going to enter a world of love that you've never experienced before for 7 days. Maybe you've experienced it in the weekend with a relationship or something, but this is a different type of spiritual love. And like you said, a language where everyone's speaking a similar language, where people are in alignment around healing. It doesn't mean it's easy. You know, I can't remember one morning we got up at like 2 a.m. or something, and we did a meditation, 3 a.m. We did a meditation for 6 hours or something crazy, and it felt like 20 minutes. You know, it's like you are going to be required and called to be your greatest self every moment, to surrender and do the work. And also the thing I love about your events, Dr. Joe, is that you don't just lead the meditations and have people walk through these meditations. You talk about the science and the research and all of the findings that's coming by doing this work for decades, and all of the data points that people have had from years ago to where they're at now. So for me, I like it in the sense of you're doing the physical work. It's a workout, mentally, emotionally, physically. You're changing those 3 states, physical, chemical, and emotional, every day. You're doing the walking meditations with beautiful sunrises. You're doing all these things. So it's a physical experience, but it's a spiritual environment in terms of like there's something happening in the room where you feel spiritually connected. And if you feel like you've been spiritually out of alignment in your life, or physically or chemically or emotionally, just a little bit off alignment, I highly recommend you go, because I just don't know what else you can do right now that can give you the elements and teaching the neuroscience and the research backing the data of the work that you're doing. So it's just got all of it, and it's a great community. So I highly recommend it.
I think, one of the common things we get in terms of feedback is that people say, I met the coolest people in the world at your event. Because everybody really is embracing change or has a vision of their future, and then they're believing in themselves and they're getting their brain and body in the right state. I think something really intangible happens. We see it when we do our random event generators. We have these sophisticated coin tosses in the room, and when people come together with coherent brains and coherent hearts, they stop behaving randomly. They start behaving very intentionally. It's kind of crazy.
This is, I don't know if people are going to catch what you just said, but when we're in the room for a week doing your retreats, there's so much love and intention towards healing and brain-heart coherence.
And creating too.
And creating and dreaming and imagining and letting go of the old self and creating the new self and creating the new personality. What does it feel like for you to experience brain-heart coherence in a room for that long, specifically the last day when there's the healings that are happening? What does that energy feel like when you're on stage and you just feel the energy, just a massive wave of energy floating at you?
It's pretty big. It's really amazing.
What is that like? And then can you explain what this random generator is, what it normally does and what it does after that?
Okay. So the greatest biological changes that we see across the board out of any meditation that we do is the coherence healings. When people are healing other people, both in the healers that are administering the healing,
ones that are giving the healing,
their biology is changing dramatically, their heart's changing dramatically. In fact, their HRV, their heart rate variability after the event, after those 3 coherence healings, continues to go up. It's a big event for them. It's a strong emotion, and their heart just somehow blooms, right? So we see the most dramatic biological changes in both the healers and the healees, because there's an energy that takes place in the room that is transcendent of anything. Now, in order for that to happen, love and logistics. We got to get everything lined up.
So true.
We got to get everything lined up. I got to get everybody on time. I got to get everybody in the right place.
Trained up for a week, ready to go.
Ready to go. This isn't about them. This is about somebody else. This is about somebody else's life. Yeah. So I can do that. We can get a group pretty intentional and pretty focused, and they come through. Music's playing, and they're in the great state, and they're about ready to love another person in life. So there's not a lot of separation between the thought and the act. They're very focused. And you get this kind of reverence taking place in the room and the energy's building. When I walk into the room and everything's synchronized like that, the hair on my body stands straight up. Like everywhere on my body, I feel like electrostatic. It's very real, right? I don't talk about this much, but when that happens, I know lightning is going to strike. I know that people are going to have a really profound moment, whoever's laying down there, right? It's going to be big. So these machines, we place them all around the room, and it would be like
a coin toss generator.
But zeros and ones.
Yes.
And it won't be 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. It may be 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1,
But it's
1,
supposed
0,
to be a 50-50
when nobody's in the room, the more you flip the coin, the more it's 50-50, right? So at the end of, a period of time when no one's in the room, you see the main line like this, the horizontal line, and it just kind of goes up and down, but it stays like 50-50.
After 100 coin tosses, or whatever.
Hundreds of thousands.
It's still 50-50.
Still 50-50. Okay. And then there's this little kind of graph that goes called the parabola, right? And that's kind of the normal range there. So then all of a sudden, here it is normal, and then enter the coherence healers, and the energy of the room changes. All of a sudden, instead of going 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, then they get in the state. All of a sudden, it goes 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Then it goes like this. And it goes 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and it goes really high.
So fascinating.
So the random machine that's been programmed to throw ones and zeros 50-50 is no longer behaving randomly. In some level, it's behaving more orderly, and it's collective networks of observers that determine reality. So then we take one of those random event generators and we insulate it with a Faraday cage, copper and nickel. It's what insulates electromagnetism. You go to a dentist.
You're like, okay, we're influencing this thing.
Right.
So how
you put a lead apron on,
or you get an X-ray or something.
So it blocks the X-ray, right? So when we wrap this one in metal fabric.
Don't tell me it still works.
No, in fact, it doesn't work, which means that we know that it's electromagnetism.
Wait a minute. So you mean it's going through that still?
So when we insulate it, right, all the other ones are behaving like this, but this one is behaving normally when we wrap it in the fabric, which means that there's some element of electromagnetism, just like an X-ray it's being shielded from, right? So heart is the magnetic charge and the brain is the electrical charge. Get a coherent brain, a coherent heart, you got an electromagnetic field, right? So we're curious. We can't say this with certainty, but there's early evidence to suggest that it is an electromagnetic field, right?
Crazy.
It's crazy. I know. This is what keeps us up at night. So now the scientists don't like to talk about this because we're transcending the material paradigm, right? But so now we have to call in quantum physicists now, and we're the next level. We're going to the next level because we have to be able to stage the experiment on a next level to see what kind of non-local effects are taking place. It's just insane.
And for those who have no clue what we're talking about, go there to the event to experience this. Again, this is the coherent healing, you guys call it, right? Is that what it's called? And this is on the last day of the event. So
last 3 days.
Last 3 days, you're going to be trained through meditation. Well, before you go, you have to go through a prerequisite course actually online. So you don't show up and be like, what is he talking about? So you're going to get educated and trained with an online course when you sign up for the advanced retreat as a requirement to get there so that you're up to speed and not this beginner. I have no clue what to do, so that you can be up to speed in the room. And it is a powerful experience. One, because you don't have your phone with you. You leave your phone in the hotel. Just doing that for a week is healing for your brain.
Of course.
Just to have some separation, right? Yeah. Now you're around thousands of people who are all living in love.
Yeah.
Thinking in love, feeling in love, living in love, and living in a future, bringing that future now and saying, I'm creating a new personality right now, leaving the past behind, and loving themselves and loving the room, the energy of the room. And so when these coherent healings happen, there's something, I get chills thinking about it, just literally thought about it and I got the chills. There's something that's happening when you create love in your body for 5 days and put it on another human being spiritually around them. You're not touching anyone, but you're energetically sending the signal of love and healing and wholeness to a human being. There's a group of you doing this for one human being. It is a profound experience.
Very profound. We bring in children that have been abused, all kinds of abuse. We bring in children with autism. We have the most incredible changes happening with these kids. I mean, we're studying our outcomes right now. We're like at about 38% of the people that we heal have an 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 change in their body in terms of their health. No doubt that pain levels go down. No doubt that their energy levels go up. And now we're doing a model where we're just taking out the placebo, where we're putting cells in a petri dish in an incubator, and that are cancer cells. And we see that when people will just have the intention for the cancer cells, the same thing happens with the mitochondrial function as advanced meditators. There's a non-local response that diminishes mitochondrial function in cancer cells, right? So it's just kind of this crazy kind of investigation. But the 7-day event is a very immersive experience. We have kids that are 8 years old that go through the whole entire thing. We have people in their 90s that go through the whole entire week. And so we want people to come together. We're going to give them information. It's not enough to just learn the information. They got to remember it. So they got to teach it back to one another. They got to build models. And then once the information's wired in their brain, they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. The how can get easier, and they can assign meaning to the act, right? And when you assign meaning to the act, you switch on your frontal lobe, and it wants an outcome. That's called intention. It says, I understand what I'm doing. I want to do this to get this outcome.
Yes.
If it's left to conjecture, or superstition, or dogma, or spirituality, people will doubt, right? So they got to really wire it in their brain. They really understand it. So they got to get that all worked out in their think box. They got to understand it. Then we go right into the application, the personalization, the demonstration, the initiation of that philosophy, of that theory into the practicum, right?
Yes.
And if you do that really well, you have the experience. You have the experience, and when you experience it, you experience the truth of that philosophy, and it changes you biologically, right? Keep doing it, and the immersive experience over 7 days, fully immersive experience, causes you to start feeling very differently than when you arrived. And the takeaway is, I just asked the audience this just 2 days ago or 4 days ago. 3 days ago, who's making you happy? There's nobody making you happy but you. Like you've sat with yourself long enough that you've gotten beyond all those programs. Like, and now you have an awareness. Like, I'm not letting that thought through ever again. When you have an awareness, you can sense when the emotion's coming up and you can regulate that. Like, there's more mastery over your attention and your energy. So we have typically like 80 to 85 countries from around the world that come. If we do Mexico, sometimes it's more like 90.
It's beautiful.
And again, all demographics, all ages, it's
a beautiful
really
experience.
Cool to see.
Yeah, it's a beautiful experience. But all having the language of love, unifying them. 2 final questions for you, Dr. Joe. Before I ask them, I want to remind people again, go to drjoedispenza.com, Instagram, Dr. Joe Dispenza, everywhere, social media, Dr. Joe Dispenza as well. Sign up for the retreat if you can. I'm telling you, I wish I went sooner. And I get people messaging me all the time saying, can you introduce me to Dr. Joe? The tickets are sold out. I need to send my friends there. How do I get a ticket? Get a ticket. There's one in Nashville happening September 14th through the 20th, and one in Orlando happening October 26th through November 1st. We'll link it up as well for you, but make sure you get a ticket. Get one for a friend if they have them available. And I have listened, you were saying beforehand, hey, what do you want to cover today? And I said, exactly what you just said. We need to be reminded and hearing these same things over and over again so that we remember them and then we can apply them consistently. Sure. So we're not thinking. And so I was like, I want you to cover a lot of the things we've already talked about over 7 or 8 years of doing interviews, because I need the reminder, even though I've listened.
So do I.
Exactly. And even though I've listened to your morning meditation, which I think is 10 years old. I think you launched it in 2015, I think.
We have a new one now.
I should watch the new one. But
I'll get it to you.
The old one, I've listened to it on repeat so many times. The morning and the evening routine one, And I've heard the intro to it so many times. And I'm like, I wish I had it memorized. I have parts of it memorized. But I'm like, I need the reminder constantly.
Sure.
So I can live in the reminder daily.
Because you're not programmed. We're programmed into
Exactly.
something else. So
Exactly.
So it's so much easier to forget it than to remember it, right?
Way easier.
I think that just to make one point around that, that's why I think knowledge is so important. I mean, if knowledge is power, knowledge about yourself is self-empowerment. So combine quantum physics with neuroscience and neuroendocrinology and psychoneuroimmunology, the mind-body connection, and epigenetics and electromagnetism and Newtonian physics. Combine all those models together so that you got to remember, like, this is why I'm doing it, right? So it's so, when you lose the luster in your meditations and it just becomes another routine, it's just because you forgot what you're doing and why you're doing it. Go back and learn. Go back and study. Go back and think. Many people, we've had so many people that show up to a week-long retreat, especially in the last 2 years. They never even came to a week-long event and they healed themselves.
Wow.
They just read the book. And they started doing the meditations and they kept reading, kept studying, kept reading it again. Okay, if I do this and I do this and this will happen, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. So then the factor that gives the real emphasis for it to become a reality is just really reminding ourselves the knowledge behind it. We have to really think about what we're doing, and it takes to renew it is to study it, and that's when that's when you get the greatest outcomes.
Constantly studying it. Two final questions for you before I ask them. I would acknowledge you again, Dr. Joe, for always showing up and giving your full heart and all your wisdom, for being a leader in this space and innovating even when the critics were constantly criticizing you for years of pseudoscience or whatever people would say. Now you have the research, now you have the backing, the real life experiences, the healings. So I just want to continue to acknowledge you for constantly leading the way in this world of transformation. When there's a lot of people in this space, you are a unique leader, and I acknowledge and appreciate you for that always. And I'm always grateful for your friendship and getting to experience the event after you finally pulled it away from me and I finally showed up to the event. So I'm grateful for all these things. And I just appreciate you, and I really hope people go to the experience. If you could remember the future for a moment, this is my second to last question. If you could remember the future 10 years out, 2035, what is the one piece of advice yourself in 10 years would tell you now?
I'd probably say that there's goodness in human beings when they're not living in survival, and that community is the future. To keep nourishing the community, because I think that, like Fuller said this, you don't try to change a culture, you just create something better, and then everybody leaves there and goes here, right? So I'm gonna do my best to keep demystifying the process, but the guy 10 years ahead would probably hopefully say that was a great ride. And if we changed enough people's lives, it was worth the effort.
That's beautiful. Final question. You've answered this before, but I'm curious if it's different now. What is your definition of greatness?
When we face the adversity in our life, the challenges in our life from a greater level of consciousness, and be able to execute it in a way that produces change without compromising our vitality.
Dispenza, appreciate you. My man. Thank you, brother.
Dealing with the matter of your life. When you choose to create authentic power, to challenge a frightened part of your personality that wants to be right, that wants to control, that wants money, sex, love, whatever it is, you are enabling yourself to create